Hello everyone, welcome to AS for CS classes. Myself CS Arun Maripalli from Hyderabad. So hope you're doing good. Please take care of your health, which is more important than your examination or any other part. Please take care. So now, see, in the previous session we have understood the background of this particular topic as to what is the importance of this subject for our long-term profession, and also the contents and the brief idea we have understood about this particular subject. If at all you didn't see that particular video, please watch that. Post that only you started with this particular topic, because we are going to start with chapter number 1. But in the previous session we have understood the overview of this particular chapter, the entire subject, as to what do you mean by drafting, appearance and pleadings, and what is the importance of this subject for both academical and professional, in the long term profession, is what we have understood in the previous session. So please do watch that, post that, please do this chapter number 1. Clear? Now, so keep the heading, chapter number 1, general principles of drafting and relevant substantive rules. See, chapter number 1 of the old syllabus, chapter number 2 of new syllabus. See, I'll not say this chapter 1 of old or new syllabus likewise, because anyhow I've given you the topic wise index apart from the chapter wise index that has been provided to you. So the contents remain same, only the chapter numbers keep on changing. So please focus on the content, that is fine. Clear? Now, general principles of drafting and relevant substantive rules, very important chapter for your examination. You can expect at least some 10 to 15 marks from this chapter, and very basic chapter for this entire drafting part. We are not going to see any agreements in this chapter, only specifically dealing with all their statutory definitions and the importance of the drafting, and another important thing with respect to components of drafting, as to how you're going to draft these agreements, in what manner you are going to incorporate some clauses in your agreements. So the basic structure is what we are going to study into this chapter, which will be a basic for the remaining chapters. So here pure theoretical part is what we are going to study. Once we are done with this chapter, then from the second chapter, each and everything, focusing on one particular topic followed by the respective agreement. Likewise, say for example, arbitration followed by the arbitration agreement, collaboration followed by the collaboration agreement, partnership deed. So likewise, specific contract wise we'll be dealing with. So on all those particular agreements part, see, theoretical part anyhow you'll be getting that, but the thing is with respect to drafting, in what manner you're going to draft those agreements, so that total depends upon this particular chapter. Clear everyone? So please understand the importance of this chapter, not only for your academic perspective, but even in a long-term profession, be it in articles or maybe in a long-term, be it employment or practice, where drafting plays a major role. That is what we have discussed in the previous session. So please focus on this particular basic things. Please do not forget these basic things. Clear? So keep the heading, general principles of drafting and relevant substantive rules. Yes. Now, before we start up as to what do you mean by the term drafting, the technical definition of the term drafting, let us understand why you being a company secretary, why being a company secretary or a corporate executive, be a chartered accountant or a KMP or a CFO or a company secretary or whoever it may be, the top level management, why we shall have the knowledge of drafting, why it is important for a corporate executive to understand or to have the knowledge of drafting. So let us discuss that. So keep the heading, importance to have knowledge of drafting. Importance to have the knowledge of drafting. First one. Say, for example, I have asked you, sir, please explain me section 186 of Companies Act. One of your friend have approached you and stated that, sir, I couldn't understand the section 186. Please explain me as to what is this section 186 and the interpretation of that section 186. Now tell me, unless you know what is the section 186, what is the interpretation of that section 186 or the intention of that law, can you explain him as to what is that section 186 of Companies Act? No. Simply, I'm explaining the concept of drafting now. Now, unless I know what you mean by this drafting, what exactly this drafting consists of, I cannot explain you. That means I cannot communicate with you as to what is this topic is all about. Same way, some relevant example. Say a company A Limited or Mr. A have executed a contract with Mr. B. Mr. A executed a contract with Mr. B where Mr. A, the owner of the property, that is who leased out, that is lessor, leased out a property in favor of Mr. B, the lessee, on the following facts. The lessee on the following facts: that the property is being leased out for a period of 10 years, at a lease rentals of 15,000 per month, whether has to be paid on or before 5th day of succeeding month. Then even a right has been given to the lessee with respect to sublease of a property. Now, and likewise that lease deed has been executed over there between the lessor and the lessee. Now tell me whether the facts are clear or is there any ambiguity with that particular clause? I mean the factual case what I have said to you. Whether all the factors that you have incorporated in your lease deed, is it fine or is there any ambiguity with the set facts? Now listen what has happened here. Mr. B is using that leased premises for commercial purpose. Mr. B is using that property for commercial purpose. Now if at all you observe in that lease deed, you never mentioned as to what is the purpose or object for which your leased premises is to be used by the lessee. So as you being a lessor, you never stated in your lease agreement as to for what purpose this property is being leased out in the favor of lessee. So that is either for the residential purpose or for the commercial purpose. You never stated any declaration or any statement in your lease deed whereby the lessee have used that property for a commercial purpose. Now the lessor have sent a notice to the lessee stating that, sir, there was a breach on part of you where my intention for leasing out this property in your favor is for the residential purpose but not for the commercial purpose. But you have used this particular property, you are using this property for the commercial purpose. So there was a breach to my contract and I am giving a notice period of 1 month to vacate this particular premises. Now you sit in the position of Mr. B now. Now what will be your contention against the notice what you have received from your lessor? Simple, sir, yes, I agree that we have executed a lease deed with you. I have taken up premises from you on a lease, but we never agreed. Rather, you never declared, you never stated me that. You never gave a covenant to me as to for what purpose this property is going to be used. You never stated that. You never restricted me that this property shall not be used for the commercial purpose. Now, as the contract was very much silent, I interpreted that the contract, the property may be used either for the residential purpose or for the commercial purpose. And likewise, I am using that property for the commercial purpose and hence there is no breach on my part. Now, likewise, say for example, this being a company B Limited where you are a company secretary of that company, and this being a lease deed, that is fine, where we could have some knowledge on that particular concept of lease, we could interpret that particular ambiguity. But say for example, there was a contract between two pharma companies in which you being a company secretary in one of the companies, and there is a dispute between the two pharma companies with respect to the subject matter. Now what happens? Now, you being a company secretary, you may not know the subject matter of the contract, the technicalities of the topic. Yes, you know that this is a particular subject matter. We're dealing with certain molecules or some other vaccines, but you don't know the technicalities of that particular topic, whereby some expert in that particular field will come into picture. Some expert in that particular field will come into picture, where you being a company secretary, you shall consult him representing your company, stating that, sir, this is a contract what we have executed with the so and so party, and our intentions was so and so, and this is a dispute that has arisen between our company and the other company, and we need this particular relief in our favor. Now, whatever the communications that you made with the expert about regarding your respective contract, when can you make such communication to that expert about your contract? A simple rule, as what we have seen with respect to 186. Unless you know that. That means, unless you know about that particular contract, unless you know what are the clauses that is been incorporated, unless you know how to draft that particular contract, and unless you know how to interpret that particular contract or the agreements or the terms that you have used, you cannot explain him or you cannot communicate with that expert when you consult him about your respective agreement. So likewise, there will be so many consultations that will be made, you being a company secretary of a company or you being a practicing company secretary, where you're going to represent before certain authorities representing your company. You're going to consult some legal experts in your practice or in your employment, that is in your profession. So likewise, there will be a consultations that will be made with different people, where there may be a discussions that may happen with regard to your documentation what you have drafted. Not compulsory a particular document, a contract. Maybe with respect to a provision, maybe with respect to an opinion writing, maybe with respect to the audit report which you intend to give, or maybe with respect to an annual report. So likewise, whatever the document it may be, where you're going to consult certain legal expert in that particular field, where you're going to communicate with him as to about the context of that particular document, and unless you know what is the document and how to draft that context, you cannot communicate with him. It is with the legal expert. Clear, everyone? So the first importance for us, that is for a corporate executive to have the knowledge of drafting, is legal consultations. Legal consultations. It means whenever you're going to consult any legal expert, be whatever the matter it is, be with respect to your financial terms, be with respect to your non-financial terms, be with respect to interpretation of any particular clause or a factual case or an evidential issue or whatever the subject matter it is, where you're going to consult with some legal expert, where you're going to communicate with him, verbally communicate with him about your contract, and unless you know the subject matter, unless you know the knowledge of drafting, the principles of drafting, you cannot communicate. Even if you communicate, the other party may or may not understand, and which may or may not serve you the purpose. Clear, everyone? So the first one is your legal consultations. Simple thing, simple rule. Unless I know, I cannot speak with you. Same way, unless you know what is that particular drafting and the knowledge of drafting, you cannot speak. Clear, everyone? Good. Second one. See, hope you are writing these examples, not in the examination, but at least try to write in your short notes so that you can easily remember the points what we are discussing here. Clear? Second one. Now, say I being a practicing company secretary, where let me take like this. In the first scenario, Mr. Arun is a layman, he's not a company secretary, a layman who is running a supermarket. Let me take some micro example first of all, later on I'll convert that into a macro example relevant to the context. So Mr. Arun is running a supermarket, okay, where Mr. X have come to that market and have purchased a particular product. Now I being Mr. Arun there, now what will be the relationship between me and me and the Mr. X? How do I call him? As my customer, right? Customer of my supermarket. Now, second scenario, Mr. Arun, practicing company secretary. Now, the same person, Mr. X, approached me, intending that to incorporate a company. Now, what will be the relationship between me and that Mr. X? How do I call him? Right? I call him as a client, as my client. And the first case, the customer. Now, listen here. Now, in the first scenario where I was running a particular business, a supermarket, where I call that Mr. X as a customer, and the same person, Mr. X, for someone else, that is for a practicing company secretary, he is a client. Now, can I call, a supermarket fellow, can he call Mr. X as his client and a practicing company secretary, his client as a customer? No, you cannot call them. Why? Sir, depending upon the field in which you are operating, there are some technical terms that is being given for that particular field, and the particular term which fits for that particular field or a department, you have to use such term only. Some macro example relevant to the your context, corporate world. Keep this example in mind. Say for example, equity. Now, if at all you ask a layman as to what do you mean by equity, or social activist, if at all you ask him what do you mean by equity, what will be the answer? That will be regarding your principles of equity. Equality to all the people. Now, if at all you ask the same thing to a practicing company secretary or a chartered accountant, that means basically a commerce fellow, he says investment. Now, the same term, two different meanings. So, in which department you are going to use, that is depending upon that particular term. Now, say a company, let me take like this, Amazon company, for example. In the first scenario, it is appointing a manager, a regional manager. You are executing a service contract. Second scenario, this Amazon company is executing a contract with another manufacturer with respect to sale of goods through its platform, whereby that is dealing with certain goods or some sale of goods rather. For a better understanding, it is supplying certain raw materials. Leave about the Amazon or where it may be. Some commercial contract you are executing here. Now listen. For the service contract, what you are executing here, what you will say, sir, for the services what you have availed to us, what you have rendered to us, or the services what we availed from you, in turn, we are going to pay certain amount, right? We are going to pay certain amount. Now, in the second case, sir, for whatever the goods that we have supplied to you, or for whatever the goods that we have purchased from you, we are going to pay certain amount to you, right? We are going to pay certain amount. Now, if at all you look into this part, the amount with respect to service contract, what do you call that as amount? As the remuneration or salary. Remuneration or salary or professional fees, depending upon the individual. Now, what do you call this price? As sale price or sale consideration. Sale consideration. Now tell me, for whatever the services that we are availing from you, that is from the manager, we are going to pay the sale price of so and so amount per month. Can you use such terms? I mean, technically, the company shall pay a sale price of rupees 5 lakh per month as a consideration for the services availed by the company from the manager. Second case, the company shall pay a remuneration of 50 lakhs for the goods purchased from the seller. Can you? No. Why? Sir, for that particular field, that means for the purchase of the goods, for that particular department, sale price or sale consideration is a technical term, a legal term, which has to be used for that particular field mandatorily, and no other term that will fit for that particular field or a department. And same way, for the service contract department or the field, the remuneration is what the term which fits for the purpose and not the sale consideration. That means, in a nutshell, sir, whenever you are drafting any contract or any document, see, drafting, you are not dealing with only a contract wise, any document, any write-up that you make, any write-up. So whenever you are drafting such documents, depending upon the field or department in which you are operating, I repeat, depending upon the field or department in which you are operating, such legal terms or technical terms which fits for that particular department shall be used mandatorily. And when can you know about that particular terms? When you have the knowledge of drafting. I repeat, sir, in order to use a legal term or a technical term which fits for the department in which you are operating, you require the knowledge of drafting. Clear, everyone? That is your second importance. So write down second one, documentation departmentally. Documentation departmentally. That means, depending upon the department in which you are operating or the field in which you are operating, you're executing certain drafting part, you're going to use some technical terms or legal terms which fits for that particular documentation purpose. Clear, everyone? That is the second one, documentation departmentally. And the last one, write down interpretation of document. Interpretation of a document. So what do you mean by interpretation? See, we are not going to read the entire concept of interpretation now, because this is not the correct time to discuss. The next session, the first chapter itself, there is a specific topic of interpretation with respect to both formal and informal agreement. There we will be discussing this concept, but for the time being, interpretation means understanding the true intention or true meaning of a particular law or a particular provision or a term which is not clear, For example, this one. There was an ambiguity in your respective lease agreement with respect to purpose of the premises. Ambiguity means not clear. So there wasn't a question mark or ambiguity in your lease agreement with respect to purpose for which the lease premises have been leased out. The premises have been leased out. So if at all there is a particular clause which is ambiguous or a particular term which is ambiguous, then the concept of interpretation will come into picture. Interpretation comes into picture as to how you're going to understand the meanings of that particular ambiguity or ambiguous clause is what interpretation. And unless you have the knowledge of drafting, you cannot interpret. Simple thing. See, unless I have the whole view of that particular topic, I cannot understand the true intentions of that particular documentation, right? So the third importance is your interpretation of document, and this we are going to study separately in the next session, and this is very important, the specific topic for 8 mark in the questions examination. Clear everyone? Interpretation of document. And these are broadly the 3 reasons, the 3 importance as to why a corporate executive shall have the knowledge of drafting. Clear everyone? So what are those? Legal consultations, documentation departmentally, and the last one, interpretation of a document. Clear? So take note of that. Faster. Please take down the examples also, but do not write the examples in the examination. Only for your knowledge purpose, please take note of the examples. Yes. So now, having understood as to why we shall have the knowledge of drafting and conveyancing, drafting, now let us understand what do you mean by drafting, the technical definition of term drafting. In the previous session, introduction session, we just understood in the general parlance as to what do you mean by drafting, just for a overview of the topic. But now here we are going to discuss about the technical definition, though there is not a statutory definition, but technically we are going to understand the term drafting. So in the previous session, what we said as drafting mean? We said preparation of legal document. Preparation of a legal document is what we have understood. Legal document. What do you mean by a legal document? There is some law which is governing that particular contract, and there is a legal relationship between both the parties. Say for example, ABC Private Limited is giving a guarantee to XYZ Private Limited. I repeat, ABC Private Limited, ABC company is giving a guarantee to XYZ company. Now, as soon as I say that a company is giving a guarantee to some other company, apart from your Contract Act, there is some other law that is governing this particular contract. What is that? Section 186. If federal 185 is applicable, even if you read that 185 too. So generally, assuming that section 186 is applicable for that particular contract. So now you are executing a guarantee deed here between ABC company and the XYZ company. So the subject matter of the contract is governed by this section 186 of Companies Act. That means basically there is a law in your drafting part where it is going to govern your drafting subject matter. Now, yes, there is a law, fine. Now I've said that, sir, ABC company is giving a guarantee to the XYZ company. Now I said you to draft an agreement here. What will you ask? Sir, please give me the factual case. You never said as to what is the amount of guarantee. First of all, we require to calculate that 186 limits, 60% and 100% limits. So for that, we require the paid up and reserves of this ABC company and XYZ Limited. And also we require whether the companies have taken any loans from the banks and financial institutions. If yes, then we need to get the approval from them. So likewise, what do you require? You require certain facts for that particular contract in which you are going to execute. You require certain facts of the case. So you got the law and you got the facts. That means what your client intends to do, that is nothing but your facts. And for this particular facts, you have a particular law which is governing these facts, this particular fact. Now, if at all you intend to do a particular act where it is going beyond the law, then automatically your law hits you and say that this is beyond the law. Then please be within the law. I mean, you being a professional, it is your job. Now, you have the facts here, and for that applicable facts, you have the applicable law. Now, you combine these two into a documented manner, and that is nothing but your drafting part. You combine this particular law and the respective facts into a legal language, into a documented manner, in a legal language form, then that is nothing but a drafting, whereby the third component, language, where you synthesis the law and the fact into a legal language, then this is nothing but concept of drafting. Synthesis of law and fact into a legal language is nothing but a drafting. I repeat, combination of law and fact into a legal language. Sir, whatever the document you take, whatever the contract that you take, be arbitration, collaboration, agency contracts, your gift deeds, your assignment deeds, your say for example your partnership deeds, trust deeds, see whatever the agreement that you take dealing with respect to legal contracts, there will be certain law which will be governing your contract, and there will be certain facts. Obviously there will be a particular facts. Now when you combine these two into a legal language that is in a documented manner, the process is nothing but, that concept is nothing but a drafting. Clear everyone? So law and fact into a legal language, that is nothing but a drafting. Clear? We'll do one thing, I'll write here so that we can revise after some time. What is it? Synthesis of law and facts into language form. Now, sir, is it mandatory that you shall require the law, facts and language compulsory? Can't we do a drafting without a fact or without a language or without a law? Or is it likewise? The law, facts and language are interdependent upon each other, where they are mutually inclusive. Let us validate that. Now, this ABC company is giving a guarantee to the XYZ company. This ABC company is giving a guarantee to XYZ company. Fine. And you know that section 186 is governing the contract. Fine, good. And I've asked you to draft an agreement here, and we need to submit that to the ROC. Let me file that particular contract. What is there in that? So I've asked you to draft a contract where I've said ABC company is giving a guarantee to XYZ company. Can you draft it? No, you know the law that section 180 is going to govern your contract, 186. And you know also the language as to in what manner I'm going to draft this contract. But you don't know the facts. Where exactly this ABC company is situated, because I never said you the SIN number, I never said you the full name of that. And who is the one who is going to sign this particular contract? Whether do you have for that any board resolution authorizing him to do so? And more precisely, importantly, what is the amount of guarantee is being given by the ABC company to the XYZ company, and what type of guarantee it is? Whether it is within the limits of section 186 or not. If it is crossed, then whether you have passed a resolution, that is you got approval from your members or not. Whether you have to take any approval from your finance institutions. So you don't know. It is from the other part. Same way with respect to the other company's point of view too. So you never know what are the facts of the case. Can you draft it? No. So what it is, facts is mandatory. I mean facts you require. Okay, understood. Next, second case. I have said to the same case, ABC company is giving a guarantee to the XYZ company, and I have said what is the paid up capital, I mean whatever the facts that is there for the contract. Sorry. Yeah. So whatever the facts with respect to the contract, I have given all the factual case for the contract. But you don't know that there is section 186 for that particular contract which is going to govern. Example, assuming you don't know that section 186 is going to govern your respective contract. but you know the facts, you know the language, but you don't know the law. Can you draft an agreement? See, drafting an agreement is not putting your pen on a paper. I'm talking about a viable document, which is, a document which is viable in a court of law. A legal document is what I'm talking to. So obviously you cannot, because you don't know the law. Unless you know the law, you cannot create a legal framework for your factual case. See, ultimately, by virtue of drafting for the whatever the factual case that is there for your client, you're going to put up a legal framework for that. So unless you know the law, what you're going to frame for that particular factual case? So, though you know the facts in the language and you don't know the law, still you cannot. So, you require the facts, you require the law. Third scenario. Yes, you know the law, you know the facts, and you know the language. You don't know the language. And this is where exactly the problems for the general students, what I generally come across. Sir, I know everything, sir. I know what are the points that has to be incorporated in your agreement. I know the factual cases too. I have a clear idea as to how this agreement shall be. With respect to the context part. But the only problem, sir, I'm not getting the technical terms to incorporate that. I have everything in my mind. If you ask me to say 8 points, I'll say 15 points. I'll say 10 points. As to these are the material facts that to be incorporated in my respective agreement. But the only problem is, sir, I'm not getting the legal terms. I'm not getting certain words to put it. So that's a very, very, very serious issue, my dear friends. Because the reason being, this is totally a new subject for you. We don't have any background for this. So unless you practice on a constant basis, unless you practice this on a daily basis, you'll not get that legal terms. This is a very, very, see, this is not only for the academical point of view. See, no one is perfect with the legal terms. There are some cases where you need to learn on a daily basis. Even I learn, you learn. Every people will study on a daily basis with respect to drafting. So no one is perfect with drafting. It's a constant study. So please practice such that you'll get these legal terms. So what we are discussing here, language. So though you know the facts, you know the law, but you don't know the language, then you draft it. But the thing is, whether the other person is understanding or not, that's a different issue here. So you shall require the facts, you require the law, and you also require the language too. That means law, facts, and language are interdependent upon each other. They are mutually inclusive. They rank equal in importance. Which means that this law, facts, and language rank equal in importance. And mutually inclusive, and thereby they are the essence of legal drafting. So the law, facts, and language are the essence of your legal drafting. Clear, everyone? Good. Next. Now tell me, if a question is being asked in the examination, or simply in the classroom itself, I asked you, sir, please explain me 185. You straight away answer me, or for a while you'll structure that answer in your mind, right? Go to your examination hall back again. When you read this question paper entire part, or one question, say 185. So as soon as you read 185, you straight away write the answer? No, right? What you'll do? You'll check out for how many marks this question is been asked. 1. Now depending upon the marks it is been asked, you're going to structure that. So in your mind, you'll create a design as to create a framework as to, sir, in this manner I'm going to present this answer. introduction, this way I'm going to present. Then the factual case, this way I'm going to write. The sorry, case law I'm going to write likewise. So likewise in your mind you'll create a design, and you'll have a factual, I mean you're going to have certain terms that these are the points I'm going to write in my examination, I mean for that answer. Likewise you create an entire design for that particular answer. Now with that particular design you start up your answer. Is it true or not? Yes. Unless you don't know the answer, that's a different scenario where you keep on writing so and so. That's a different issue. I'm not just talking about that. So I'm talking about that answer which you know perfectly, where you create a particular design with the all the points that you're going to write, and in what manner you're going to write. Two things: what I'm going to write, how I'm going to write that. So the context and the presentation is what you keep in your mind. Then with that particular basic inputs, you write your output answer, right? Same way, when a client approaches you, with respect to a drafting part, sir, I require a lease deed to be executed, or I require an alteration of an MOA, or I require a legal opinion, or I require an audit report, or whatever the context it may be, where basically you're doing a drafting. Now, as you being a draftsman, whenever you start composing this, it means you start writing this, drafting that particular document. Before that, you being a draftsman, first of all understand as to what is this context is all about. Get all the minute things, get all the facts for that particular contract. Then with that particular facts, make a design. Then with that is basically, you first of all you make the thinking process, completely. Get all the minute facts for that particular drafting part. Now if at all you get all the inputs, then based on that inputs you're going to elaborate your drafting part. That means drafting, it is first thinking, then process, the second composing. I repeat once again, drafting is first thinking, second composing. That means you being a draftsman, first of all, before composing a draft, get all the minute facts for that particular contract. Now once you placed with all these particular inputs, then straight away compose your drafting part, which will be easy because that will be based on the thinking process what you have made. Clear everyone? So write down: first thinking, second composing. Very important. First thinking, second composing. Clear everyone? Good. Next, see the drafting. Let me take some example here. Yeah, listen this example. See, this ABC company is giving a guarantee to the XYZ company. You got all the facts, it is fine. You're executing a guarantee contract. Now, you said that, sir, there is a particular law which is going to govern that. What is that? Companies Act 2013. Now listen here. You're drafting a particular agreement. You're drafting a particular document, rather. You're drafting a document where the document is based on some other document with respect to the legality. Accordingly, you can categorize these two draftings into two forms. One, statutory drafting. Two, commercial drafting. See, statutory drafting is going to provide you a particular law, a rule or a regulation or a mandate on part of an applicable party, a respective party, to do a particular act. This statutory drafting of Companies Act 2013 is giving a mandate to a respective individual, that is a company, to do an act in a prescribed manner. What is that act? You give a guarantee in this prescribed manner. Likewise, this drafting is going to give you a mandate, and that drafting is called as statutory drafting. Now, to effectuate that act with respect to the other company that is giving a guarantee, in what manner you are giving a guarantee is what you are executing a commercial drafting with the other company, whereby the commercial drafting what you made here, this commercial drafting shall be in line with the applicable statutory drafting. I repeat once again, please follow here. The commercial drafting what you have done there, that commercial drafting shall be in line with or within the designated boundaries of the statutory drafting applicable. That means, if I am executing any service contract with respect to appointment of a managing director under a Companies Act 2013, then the service contract will be a commercial drafting, with that commercial drafting shall be in line with the Companies Act 2013, which is a statutory drafting. Arbitration agreement, there is a commercial drafting which shall be in line with the applicable statutory drafting, that is your Arbitration Act. Clear, everyone? That means all your commercial drafting shall be in line with the applicable statutory drafting. This is the nutshell. Clear? So drafting may be commercial drafting or a statutory drafting. Clear, everyone? And the last one, this drafting acts in two planes. This acting drafts in two planes, two forms. What are those? I've said you, sir, you being a draftsman, you may be consulting an expert where you're going to communicate. Sorry, my hand is touching here. Sorry. Yeah. You being a draftsman, you're going to communicate with other party about your respective contract, what you have executed, or the drafting what you have made there. So, you're going to verbally communicate. Now, when can you verbally communicate with other party? When you have having the knowledge of drafting. This is what we have discussed, the legal consultations when we discussed about it. That means, as a draftsman, first of all, you be conceptually thorough about the topic what you have executed there. You be conceptually thorough with the subject matter or the interpretation or whatever the matter it may be, with the context what you have drafted. Be conceptually thorough. Now, once you are conceptually thorough, where if someone else asks you about that particular contract, or whenever you are going to consult any particular expert or any individual it may be, you shall be able to communicate with him verbally communication about the respective contract. So, this drafting acts in two planes. One is conceptual, because unless I am conceptually thorough with that subject matter, I cannot draft an agreement. And once I drafted an agreement, I shall be communicating to the other party about your respective contract, that is your verbal communication. So, drafting acts in two planes. One is conceptual and the other one verbal. Clear, everyone? So, write down that, replace here. Two planes, conceptual and verbal. Clear, everyone? And this is the concept of drafting. So what it says, it is synthesis of law and fact into a legal language, where such law, facts and language are the essence of legal drafting, where they are interdependent upon each other. which rank equal in importance. See, you being a draftsman, you have to understand the relationship between, you should create a nexus or a relationship between the law of facts and the language, so that you could incorporate a better drafting with respect to such facts what you have collected from the applicable law and the respective facts from your respective client. Clear, everyone? Then the drafting may be drafting is first thinking, second composing. Then what do you mean by that? First of all, you get all the minute facts. Now with that particular basic inputs, start composing your agreement. Then drafting may be a commercial drafting or a statutory drafting. All your commercial drafting shall be in line with your applicable statutory drafting. And the last one, drafting acts in two planes. One is conceptual and the other one being verbal. Clear, everyone? So this is the concept of drafting. Clear? Can we move ahead? Yes. Keep the heading. First of all, hope you have taken note of that. Take this. That one. In a nutshell, that is what your drafting mean. See, anyhow, you'll be getting that material. I've already posted you that material. And that is a comprehensive material. The reason being that each and every draft is been included from your ICSA material without any alterations. 1, 2, that the material is being drafted in a question and answers format, because both material and immaterial facts have been included in your ICSA material. So it doesn't make any sense for me to copy once again from the as-it-is from the ICSA material and give it to you as a copy paste. So I don't like it. So I condensed with respect to the examination perspective, but each and every topic, including the registration stamp duty, is also included. So no topic is left from the ICSA material. And keeping in view of that extreme question point of view, the answer has been provided, because sometimes a question may be asked for 8 mark or 4 mark. So the answer is being given keeping in view of 8 marks, such that you can cut down that depending upon the question that is being asked, marks that is being asked for that. Clear, everyone? So that is the reason the material looks huge, but that will be useful for you. Apart from that comprehensive material, the revision material will also be available, revision mode book, where it will be likewise only like this, cut short, purely with respect to revision point of view that has been made. And as a constant request that I received from the students with respect to drafting part, that basically what I say is to write down in one word about the drafting part, so that will be easy for you to revise. That is what I generally say to in the class to the students. But that remains same. I keep on saying and you keep on okay sir, okay, we'll look into it, but you'll never look into that. That's a different case. So what I've done is that I've made that particular material for you people, where the drafting the terms in the one word or two words I've written, such that you can elaborate. If at all you revise that, at least you remember that, then you can elaborate that points. So likewise, a revision mode book have been made. There is available in the website. That will be made available. So if at all you're interested, you can avail that. You can take that material. That will also be useful for you for the time of revision. Clear? But first of all, that you read from the comprehensive material, then go for the revision material. That will be useful. Clear, everyone? Fine. So we'll move to the next topic. Keep the heading. Conveyancing. Yes. Have you come across the term conveyancing anytime? Conveyance. Think somewhere you have come across the term conveyance. Conveyance in your Transfer of Property Act, your ECL, ECL of your executive level. Sir, how come executive level we could remember, sir? Okay, fine. The topics that we studied yesterday we don't remember, then how come the executive level? Fine. Okay, see, have you come across a conveyance fee? Generally we come across this conveyance fee in accounts field. Why? What is that? Conveyance. What do you mean by conveyance in general meaning? Let us understand what do you mean by conveyance in general meaning. Then we'll understand the context of drafting part. Conveyance literally mean a vehicle, or not motor vehicle, rather vehicle or means through which a particular transaction takes place. Through which a particular transaction takes place. That is what you mean by conveyance. And for that you charge a fees. Where the reason for which the transaction has taken place, it is from movement of goods from one place to another place. So a mean through which a transaction takes place, that mean is nothing but a conveyance. Clear? Now coming to the context of drafting. Say for example, Mr. A intends to sell a property to Mr. B, B being a prospective buyer and A the seller. Now what he said, before that, see, you have paid me the fees for attending these classes. So you paid me that particular fee and I've said that, sir, it's okay madam, see where am I going, I'll be here only, so I'll not pay any, I'll not give any receipt to you, I acknowledge that you have paid the fees to me. Is it okay? Obviously not okay, sir. I require the receipt. In the same way, what is happening here, Mr. A is selling a property to Mr. B, the buyer, and what Mr. A is said that, sir, you please pay me the consideration, I'll hand over the property to you, and the sale has been done. Is it okay? No. What do you require? A document. We call the document as a sale deed. So irrespective of the terms, whatever it is, you require a document. Why? You require a document where you complete a transaction of a sale of property from one person to another person. Now tell me, without this document, can you complete this transaction? No, you cannot. No, you cannot. So you require this particular document to effectuate a transaction of a sale of property from Mr. A to Mr. B, which will be countersigned by both the parties. And by virtue of the document called as a sale deed, a property from Mr. A shall be transferred in favor of Mr. B and to the name of Mr. B, the legal heirs. And upon submission of this document to the registrar authorities, the title documents will be transferred in favor of the new owner, new buyer, prospective buyer. Means this is a particular vehicle or a mean through which a transaction have taken place from a person to another person. Sir, what is my transaction? Sale of a property is my transaction. Now to effectuate this transaction, to complete my transaction, what I require? A particular document. This is a particular vehicle for me to effectuate this transaction from one person to another person. That is what conveyance. Now, what actually do you mean by conveyancing here? This is what you are saying with respect to your vehicle to complete this transaction. But what is this document? What you are going to do here? Mr. A selling a property to Mr. B, a property at so and so price, so and so location. Act is going to govern Transfer of Property Act, and likewise you have executed a sale deed. What is it? Sir, is it not drafting? Because you have the law, you have the facts, you do have the language, you combined all these three and you made this document. So is it not a drafting? Yes, that is a drafting. Yes, that is a drafting. Okay, I agree. Drafting. Drafting of a deed. Fine. But now what it is dealing with? This drafting is dealing with certain transfer of property. Certain transfer of property. The property may be movable property or immovable property. Immovable property. Now listen, we have derived certain meaning for a conveyance here. Conveyancing is also art of drafting. It is also art of drafting of the deeds, but that deed specifically deals with respect to your transfer of property. The deed specifically deals with respect to your transfer of property, where the property may be movable or immovable property. I repeat once again. Sir, the conveyancing is also a drafting part only. Conveyancing is also drafting. But drafting of those particular documents which deals with respect to your transfer of property. The property may be movable property or immovable property Here, example, in the first case, you are selling a house property for which you require this particular document. So that was an immovable property. Say for example, you intend to sell a gold or a particular bike, your RC and all. So it is nothing but a document through which a particular transaction has taken place. That is movable property. Now what's happening in the third case? You are taking a loan from a particular banker and you created a charge. You created a mortgage in favor of your SBI, of your respective property. Now what's happening here? Sir, there is a transfer of property. In the above said two cases, we said the entire transfer, not a beneficial, rather it's an absolute transfer. Absolute transfer. Then the next case, you are just transferring an interest. In this case, pledge, mortgage, hypothecation, lease, license, leave and license. In all these cases, only a beneficial interest has been assigned in favor of another individual. Now to effectuate that license or to effectuate that hypothecation, that means basically to effectuate the transfer of interest, you require this document. Say Mr. A intends to lease out a property in favor of Mr. B. Now this is my transaction, lease of a property. Now how to complete the transaction? What I require? A lease deed. A lease deed. So conveyancing is also drafting of those deeds which deals with respect to transfer of property. The property may be movable, immovable, or interest thereon. Clear everyone? And the transfer does not include the concept of inheritance. Why? Because there is no definition for the term transferor and transferee, because the property distribution is happening due to operation of law. Clear everyone? This is the term conveyancing, and the term conveyance has been defined under the Stamp Act 1899. So now sir, what is the difference between drafting and conveyancing then? Sir, drafting deals with all the property documents, all the drafting part, be it your movable, be it a property documents or a non-property documents. Say for example, appointment of a company secretary. For that you require an appointment letter. Is it a drafting? Yes, that's a drafting. Is it dealing with any movable, is it dealing with any property is there? No. So that is not a conveyance, that is only a drafting part. Now the drafting may be, say for example, let me continue that example. Drafting, appointment of a company secretary, yes, that was a drafting. 2, you are selling a property. Is it a drafting? Yes, that is also a drafting. That means drafting deals with both property documents and also non-property documents, which involves property, which doesn't involve property. And out of that, which deals with respect to property documents, that is your conveyancing. That is your conveyancing. And everything is your drafting. Clear everyone? Sir, drafting of a document, preparation of a document is drafting. Conveyancing, drafting of deeds dealing with respective property is what conveyance means. Hope this is clear now. I repeat once again, drafting, it is preparation of a document, preparation of a documents, whatever the document it may be. Conveyancing, drafting of a deeds dealing with respect to transfer of property. Property may be movable, immovable, or interest thereon. Clear everyone? This is the concept of drafting and conveyancing. So drafting is a very wider term, conveyancing is only a narrower term which deals only with respect to property. Drafting deals with both property and non-property. Clear everyone? Say where the drafting term, the preparation of a document has been defined in several acts. The term conveyance is defined in this Stamp Act. Clear everyone? Now listen here, what has happened with respect to the same case. Mr. A intending to sell a property to Mr. B. On 1/1/2020 they made a contract. That Mr. A is going to sell a property to Mr. B on so and so conditions. So likewise the conditions have been finalized by both the parties by way of a contract. So they made an offer, Mr. A made an offer for which Mr. B have accepted that offer, and there was a consensus addendum, and there was a legal consideration which was possible to perform it. So, and there was a legal relationship that have been created by Mr. A and Mr. B. So likewise, there was a contract which has been formed between Mr. A and Mr. B, whereby certain rights over the property have been created in favor of another person, and same way with respect to certain liabilities have been created against each other, where Mr. A promised to sell a property to Mr. B, and where Mr. B promised to purchase a property by payment of certain amount. Now if either the parties fails to perform that, what will be the case? Legal remedy, because there was a reciprocal promise that I will sell the property and you will purchase the property and you will pay the consideration. 2, if at all you don't pay that, or if at all I don't sell that, then there will be a legal remedy because there was a legal relationship. So likewise a contract has been formed, an agreement to sell. Now based on the finalized terms and conditions of this particular parties, now you are executing a conveyance deed. Now tell me, sir, the conveyance, by virtue of this conveyance, your property is going to be transferred. The contract has already been made. See, there is a thin line between contract and conveyance difference part. See, the contract has already been made. Now you are just drafting that drafting of that particular contract into a particular paper documentation. That is nothing but your conveyancing, drafting of your sale of property. In what manner the property is going to be transferred, finalized. In what manner you are going to discharge the consideration, finalized in the contract. And in what manner this particular expense is going to bear, finalized in your contract. And all those things you are putting up in your conveyancing part. So no new right is being created here. The rights already been created, you are just documenting into that. No new right has already been, because the property has already been transferred by way of your contract, and the reciprocal promise has already been made by virtue of contract. So hence again no new promises will be made here. Clear everyone? So the contract and conveyancing differences here, because the contract is already been made, and by basis of that particular contract you are making conveyancing now. That is drafting part. So contract, 2 important things: reciprocal promises and the legal remedy, where this will not be there in conveyancing because that is only a drafting part, because the contract is already been made. You will not have any reciprocal promise because the contract is already been made, where there is no new right is coming up here. Already your rights have been transferred over there. Clear everyone? This is the difference between contract and conveyancing. So what we have understood here, the drafting, conveyancing, Difference between drafting and conveyancing, difference between contract and conveyancing is what we have understood. Clear, everyone? So shall we quickly revise from the material, then shall we move forward into that? Yes. What is saying? Explain the importance to have the knowledge of drafting and conveyancing, or it is imperative for a corporate executive to have the knowledge of drafting and conveyancing. Comment. Now what it's saying? As a company has to enter into various types of agreements with different parties, it is imperative for a corporate executive to know the knowledge of drafting and conveyancing. The importance to have the knowledge of drafting and conveyancing for a corporate executive has been felt particularly for three reasons. One, for obtaining legal consultations. The corporate executives can have a better interaction with a legal expert while seeking legal advices with regard to the matters to be incorporated in the documents, to decide upon the coverage and laying down the rights and obligations of the parties therein. Second, for carrying out documentation departmentally. An executive can make a better documents with all the facts known and judging relevance and importance of all aspects to be covered in. So each and every fact you can include within this correct legal term for that particular department. Last one, interpretation of a document. In the absence of a particular legislation on conveyancing, it is imperative to have the knowledge about the rules of interpretation so as to incorporate the will and the intention of the parties to the documents, because there was an ambiguity. Clear, everyone? Next, term drafting. Drafting may be defined as a synthesis of law, fact, and to a language form. Means preparing the legal documents like agreements, contracts, deeds, etc. The essence of a legal drafting or the law, fact, and language which rank equal in importance and mutually inclusive. Legal drafting is a crystallization and expression in a definitive form of a legal right, privilege, function, or a status. It's a development and preparation of a legal instrument such as constitutions, statutes, regulations, ordinances called as statutory drafting. The contracts, the wills, conveyancing, trust, that is your commercial drafting. It operates in two planes. One is conceptual and the verbal. The drafting is first thinking, second composing. Important. Proper understanding of drafting can't be realized unless the nexus between the law, fact, and language is fully understood and accepted. Drafting requires serious thinking followed by the prompt action to reduce the available information into writing with a legal meaning, open for judicial interpretation to derive the same sense and intention of parties with which and for which it has been prepared, adopted, and signed. So the true intentions of the draftsman in drafting that particular contract has to be conveyed in the same manner as what he intended to. Clear, everyone? Then conveyancing. Conveyancing is art of drafting of deeds and documents whereby a land or interest in land, that is immovable property, is being transferred. Later on we will discuss about the movable property too. Section 2 subsection 10 of Indian Stamp Act 1899, it includes a conveyance on a sale and every instrument by which property, whether movable or immovable property, is transferred inter vivos. That means during lifetime. During lifetime means it will not include will, because it will be effective after the death of your testator. So during lifetime, which is not otherwise specifically provided or excluded in your schedule 1, it does not include the will. That is what we have said that. Section 205 of Law of Property Act 1925 provides that conveyance includes a mortgage, charge, lease, assent, vesting declaration, vesting instrument, disclaimer, release, and every other assurance of property or any interest. So property where it has been absolute transfer or an interest, that is a beneficial transfer by an instrument except a will. In general sense, a conveyance is an act of conveyancing or transferring any property, whether movable or immovable, from one person to another, permitted by the customs, conventions, and the laws of the country. According to Transfer of Property Act, transfer may be by sale, by lease, by giving gift, by exchange, by will, etc., but not acquisition of property by inheritance. See, is talking about to transfer. That is the reason he included the will. He's not talking about conveyance. He's talking about transfer here. And he said that it is not including the inheritance concept. Thus, conveyance is an act of conveying or transferring any property, whether movable or immovable, from one person to another person with respect to your conventions and the respective applicable law. Clear, everyone? That is the conveyance part. Then, differences between drafting and conveyancing. Drafting is a way and manner of preparation of any document. Conveyancing is a way and manner of preparation of only those documents which are pertaining to transfer of property. Drafting gives a general meaning synonymous to preparation of drafting of documents, whereas it stress more about the transfer of property from one person to the another person. As it relates to the every document, so document is been defined in several acts, whereas conveyance is defined in Stamp Act. Concept of drafting is wider, it's narrower, and the examples part. Clear, everyone? So this is drafting and conveyancing differences part. Conveyance and contract. Contract is an agreement which is enforceable by law, whereas conveyancing is an art of drafting. So this is putting up a paper. So art of drafting of any document which by transfer takes place. Read once again this one. Drafting is an art of drafting of any document by which, that is your vehicle, by which a transfer takes place. So contract consists of reciprocal promises, because as you do something, in turn I'll do one thing. That is what the reciprocal promise means. And each party to the contract is bound to perform the promise. There is no such promise in title in respect of the property in question. It already passes in favor of the vendee. By virtue of the contract, by virtue of your reciprocal promises, the property gets transferred just by executing this conveyance deed. Contract creates a right of action in favor of the parties. Thus, in case of a breach of contract, the aggrieved party may claim number of remedies such as compensation, specific performance, etc. The conveyance does not create any right of action, but at the same time, it alters the existing rights. So by virtue of this conveyance deed, your property is going to be transferred. So it's governed by the Indian Contract Act, and conveyance is governed by your transfer of property. Clear, everyone? So this is with respect to the drafting part. Yes. Clear? Any doubts? See, if at all you have any doubts, please do call me. You have my number, so please do call me. Don't hesitate. Whatever the doubts that you have, you please clear. Then you move to the next topic. Clear, everyone? So don't hesitate. You can text me. You can call me. No issues. You can follow. I've been in FB, Insta, so you can follow over there and you can text me over there. I can give you the better inputs. Clear, everyone? Yes. So we'll move ahead.